Good morning. Today we're with Mona Morstein, who is now in the second printing of your book, Master Your Diabetes. Let's talk a little bit about where did that idea come to write a book about your relationship and your work in the area of diabetes?
Well, thanks for asking, Ed. I've been seeing people with diabetes for 25 years very seriously, and I have been a frequent lecturer at conferences. I created my own 2-day seminars, one on just general view and treatment of how to do diabetes, and one was on an insulin intensive seminar to teach people how to properly use insulin for those patients dependent on it. And it just seemed like more and more, if there was a book out there that was written in the balance of being for patients, being for parents of patients, and being for physicians, I would be able to reach a wider range of people that could really learn a very comprehensive way of addressing diabetes and controlling it, or type 2 diabetes, maybe even putting it in remission. So it was just trying to get more information out there to the people who need it.
That's fantastic. That's the one thing I noticed about your book is rather than being narrowly focused on like just a patient and patients trying to self-treat by reading a book and saying, well, I can do this, you have a broader spectrum of how you present your material. Was that initially what you wanted to do, or is that something that evolved as you started to write the book?
Well, I mean, I wrote the book, and then I kind of had to rewrite it. Just when I went through it, tidied it up, edited it, and then of course you have a publisher, so you've got an editor, a copy editor, and then the proofreader, and so with their input, although I think my work mainly has maintained its total initial structure and what I was looking for, but it's a lot better having gone through that process. And I told them right off that I'm trying to write a book that patients would find accessible and wouldn't be too overwhelming, but yet would reach a level of clinicians so that they could see value and learn how to adapt their practices to incorporate the data for their own treatment of patients.
Do you perceive that the book could become a companion piece that naturopaths or integrative medicine specialists could actually use with their patients, almost guiding them with the book so that they're invested not only in a treatment protocol but an understanding of the protocol by reading the book at the same time?
Well, that's what I hope. I mean, I do have a number of colleagues saying they're selling it in their practices. When someone comes with diabetes, this is their reference book that they want the patients to use. So I think that would be really a great way to go. I know my mentor, Dr. Richard Bernstein, I mean, I used his book that way, and of course now I think my book obviously can easily work that way because it's dealing with so many different aspects of what we need to do to really help people with diabetes understand why they developed it and how can their body be treated to best get it under control, or even, as I say, put it in remission. There's many different factors that have to be looked at, and each patient may not be having to deal with every single factor, but a good doc will look at these factors and analyze their patient and then be able to uncover, well, we better really focus on this and this and this, and here's some guidelines of how we do that.
Yeah, as a diabetic patient myself, the things that I've learned over the years and having met you initially at the college was that there is no one diabetic patient. There is a broad spectrum of what may have led to diabetes, and there's equally as broad a spectrum of how it could be treated successfully. There's like no, I think patients sometimes say, I've been diagnosed with diabetes and that's it. Well, no, that's not necessarily it. There's a combination of things that can be brought to bear, and I think that's in my mind, that's what you bring out in the book, is that it's not like I'm just going to go diet and I'm just going to go walk. It's a progressive disease, and it's something you should understand and respect. I think some people take it lightly and others don't. But in terms of that, I think your book addresses that issue pretty clearly. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how you address the fact that there are more things involved in diabetes than a lot of people would understand?
Well, my book and the nonprofit I've started, lowcarbdiabetes.org, well, that's the website, but Low Carb Diabetes Association. Both of these work off of what we call the 8 essentials, and that is diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, healing the gut and the microbiome, environmental detoxification, supplementation, and then medication. So these are the key aspects that incorporate many different things, but that as certainly at least these 8 aspects, or maybe medications we can leave out only if necessary, but the other 7 aspects, this is what we really have to know about patients to really be able to balance their body fully and enable them to have the most complete care. I know in conventional care they're saying diabetes is progressive, but really, Ed, I honestly don't agree with that. Uncontrolled diabetes is progressive. A well-controlled person with diabetes who has numbers that don't even look like they have diabetes, they're not going to progress. So I think in a conventional care, you get diabetes, we just have medicines. We're probably not going to give you any nutrition, or we're going to say go exercise, but you don't get any details. And then, you know what, then after 3 years you need your second medication. And then after 2 more years you need your third medication. And then the next thing we're going to have to do is put you on insulin. And then you're going to get, you're going to get your complications, and you're going to die 12 years earlier than a person who doesn't have diabetes. But that's conventional, right? Mm-hmm. And I had one patient who, a type 2 diabetic, on insulin, on basal insulin, 70 units a night. She bought my book, read it, started following things, and in a week she's down to 40 units of insulin with much better blood sugar, and 3 weeks later she's down to 20 units of insulin with much better blood sugar, right? So, this idea that it's progressive if you don't look at it through this really full kaleidoscope of balancing out a patient's health on many different levels.
That's excellent, and it's such a, I would say, unique approach, because as I said, myself having diabetes, I have a library somewhat like what you have behind of everybody it's all about this, it's all about your blood type, it's all about this, it's all about something else. And as I went through all of that, I read it's not all about all those things. And then as a film writer, one of my mentors at one time said, nobody knows anything. They come with so many different ideas and nobody has anything creative. I think what you've done is you've taken this wealth of knowledge, this years of literally working in the field, and taking it from philosophically to an action approach in your book. And that's what I find very, very exciting.
Thanks.
Tell me a little bit about your nonprofit again, because that's an exciting thing also. I'm a member.
Thank you.
And I get your updates, and there's not one that comes that I'm not seeing something new,
Right.
And saying, I did not know that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, thanks. I was connecting with a colleague, a Dr. Jesse Hager, who's a friend, was a student of mine at school, but we became friends. And he was bemoaning the fate of conventional care of diabetes. And and of course I told him I had been bemoaning it for about 20 years longer than he had. And so we, on a spur of the moment, decided that, we have the American Diabetes Association, which is at diabetes.org. And they've done, it's not like they're a bad organization. They've done a lot of research, and they've also, I think the best thing about them is they've done so much promoting diabetes that people with diabetes can get jobs and go to school, and there's, they're protected. And so they've done a lot to help people with diabetes have a good, rich life in society. But they're very drug oriented, and they have historically had a very high carb diet, drug orientation for treatment, which doesn't work, right? Which is why diabetes does progress, which is why uncontrolled diabetes, it's the number one reason people go blind and have kidney disease and have amputations after trauma. And so we decided on the spur of the moment that maybe we need to form a low carb diabetes association. And luckily, the website was actually still available, and we created it. And it took us a whole year to form a nonprofit. To go by step, I can certainly recommend LegalZoom. They're fantastic. But between, and then if you're trademarking and then, getting registered, this and that. So it's a year's process and a little bit of money, but not too bad. And then we're up and running. So our key point is those those 8 essentials. Obviously, we believe that a foundational diet for diabetes is the low carb diet, but then we need to educate people about nutrition and about what do we mean when we say exercise, or how do you get good sleep, or what is the gut, and how do we heal a microbiome, and what about environmental toxicity, which has a huge impact in creating people's insulin resistance and even their obesity. So so we're trying to get a lot of information out and educate people along how to use integrative care for their diabetes, perhaps instead of just conventional care.
That's fantastic. And then I would see your book as really a companion piece to this really broad view of how to deal with this really a national epidemic.
Internet, a worldwide, global epidemic,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a global epidemic. It's certainly a huge, if we look at statistics, if we have 30 million Americans with diabetes, and we have around 90 that are pre-diabetic, and there's 360 million people in the country, about 1 out of every 3 person right now is a pre-diabetic or a diabetic. Mm-hmm. And worldwide, it's, and what do we have now? About almost 70% of people are overweight or obese. So it is a pretty big crisis, and it's a equal crisis worldwide as well. 300 million diabetic patients worldwide, and pre-diabetics, and that's growing as well into a huge problem.
I think the nutritional aspect that you bring out is so critical, because I became aware of it, that as a culture we're so carb-centric. I call it carb-centric. And I remember reading this one book that said, if you want to eat healthy, go to the perimeter of the store, nothing in the middle. And I thought, well, and I did that. And I started going to the perimeter, and all of the produce was in the perimeter,
Sure.
and the protein was in the perimeter,
Uh-huh.
and then you go through the center and you get these high carb, high sugar cereals and those types of things. Well, yeah, okay, now it makes sense.
Right.
Absolutely makes sense. Well, you're in your second printing, so that's pretty exciting. 'Cause
Yeah, that was
a lot
very
of people
exciting.
start books and they're like, "Oh, we'll see how this goes." So, and I can see that you're going to have nothing but success with this. And I appreciate you taking a little bit of your time today in your home to talk about, how this was created and what your goal is in helping people, which I have known from the moment that I first met you that you have a big heart for that. So I want to thank you for taking time, and if you have any closing words, I'd be happy to take those.
I'd say you can, if you just go to Amazon and look up Mona Morstein, and the full title is Master Your Diabetes, a comprehensive integrative approach for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. But of course, everybody just says Master Your Diabetes. And right now, someone told me it seems to be the number 1 best-selling book on diabetes on Amazon. So it's affordable and full of information. So thank you, Ed. This was really terrific. I'm very touched with this interview offer that you gave me.
Well, thank you so much, and we appreciate being a friend and also being someone who's a strong supporter of what you're doing here, not only nationally but internationally. Thank you again.
Thank you.